Welcome everyone to our workshop on exploring change and hope through liberating structures. I'm really glad you could all join. I know people are still joining, so this will be a soft opening to what this topic is all about. And I'll start by reading how we invited you to this session. Hope is a strong modulator on our everyday experiences. Research also suggests that hope influences our long-term outcomes and sense of agency. In this session, we're likely to explore the relationship between change and hope using liberating structures. And we'll explain a little bit more what we mean by those terms, but we're also curious what you understand by those terms. Drawing on insights from complexity science, liberating structures are minimally specified methods for engaging more of a group's collective intelligence, imagination, and creativity. We asked you to come prepared for a bit of restful dialogue and rambunctious engagement. So this is how we announce today's workshop. My name is Henrietta Landgren. I'm an assistant professor in the Learning, Leadership, and Organization Development program at the Mary Frances Early College of Education at the University of Georgia. I know many of you knew this already, but I thought I'd say it anyway, just to make sure. And as part of my teaching and being in the world in this space of LLOD, I'm currently facilitating a theory of change course. And many of those in this course are actually present here, which I'm grateful for. And in this theory of change course, we get to explore change at different levels and from different perspectives. We look at it from an individual perspective, from a small team or team perspective, organizational perspective, community perspective, social, global perspectives. We look at things like ecological change and how that works out all out, cosmological change, and anything beyond that. Now, when teaching this course in the last semester in the spring, one graduate student brought some new terminology into that space, and I was very intrigued by that terminology. Carrie Eller, who is, I think, here today as well, talked about imaginative hope. And Carrie Eller, one of our PhD candidates in the program, wrote in her paper, referring to a neuroscientist who had studied neuroscience of the religious experience, that when all feels lost, when logic dictates that there is no way forward, clinging onto hope is what may cause us to keep trying, and ultimately what may lead us past whatever barrier is blocking our path. Now, I felt very inspired by this perspective for both the now that we're experiencing and for the past, when I personally experienced change that deeply affected me. It affected me professionally and also personally. It was in May of 2019 when I lost my job. I had worked for a dairy manufacturer in Syracuse, New York. And as you can imagine, the change came pretty sudden. It was unexpected. And I think that's just how layoffs work, right? My spouse and I had immigrated to the United States 7 years prior, and I knew that losing one's job was one of those typical American experiences. But the insight did not really help me much. I was very sad, angry, frustrated, borderline desperate, and disillusioned of what work was all about. What was nice is that around that time, I was introduced to the concept of liberating structures through a workshop that Fisher Kwa, who is present here with me today, facilitated in New York City. And I have to admit, at first I was a bit skeptical, liberating structures. How could structures possibly be liberating? I didn't quite know how to make sense of that. And that seemed like an oxymoron to me when I first got introduced to it. But as I engaged with the principles and methods of liberating structures, I began to see how they could unlock new ways of thinking, of approaching change, of thinking about adversity, and the challenges we face. Liberating structures tap into collective intelligence, imagination, and creativity, as I mentioned, and in ways that I feel energizing rather than overwhelming. So I felt that back then when I lost my job, and I feel that right now. I think it's a good moment in time to be in a space together and to explore liberating structures. Most importantly, liberating structures helped me to really discover a sense of hope, not just passive hope, but this imaginative hope that Carrie Ella had introduced to our class. And it's the kind of hope that keeps us trying, that leads us past barriers, even when logic tells us there's no way forward. So this experience has stayed with me, and that's why I'm so excited to share some of my passion with you, all of you today, because I believe in times of great change, we need these things to hang on to. And when it's easy to feel lost or discouraged, it's good to access that wellspring of hope. And I think it has the potential to carry us much further. So welcome you all again. And I think at this point, I'm wondering, Fisher, how how is this session important for you?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Yetta, for inviting me. It's good to be with you all. So I'm Fisher. I'm based in northern New Mexico. Um, I don't really know what I do, everybody. Like I end up in these different communities from time to time, uh, hanging out, getting to know what people are up to. Right now, I'm spending a lot of time actually within the child welfare system. It's like a big thematic domain that I happen to be spending a lot of time in. But I also tend to spend a lot of time in educational settings, whether that's higher ed or with K-12 educators. And then I also have spent quite a bit of time working with like scientific engineering and research groups, thinking about how they can collaborate, usually cross-institutionally, in a way that helps them deliver on something that they couldn't have delivered on their own. What we're going to start with today, after Yetta's really lovely context setting, is just a little bit of background on liberating structures. And then we're going to try and dig right into to the methods themselves. We find that experiencing the methods is a much better way to learn them than talking about them. So we're going to actually use 3 of the methods in this session today. But before that, we're going to use chat right now. And we're going to have 3 chat prompts to respond to. And the first one is, I'm going to put in right now, it's just, what does the word liberating mean to you? Like, what's your definition? What's your association with it? How do you think of the meaning of that word? So take a moment and in chat, just write down what you associate with the word liberating. Qingyu, you already love it. Qingyu's already got the very definition of liberating is already a paradox. I love it. uh, nice. I always appreciate this because groups are always way more poetic than I could be on my own. So the next chat prompt is, uh, as you might have guessed, what does the word structure mean to you? How do you define structure? What's your association with it? How do you think about the word structure? Hmm, cool. I feel like Kirk, I feel like you're like a material scientist. You're a material scientist, Kirk, or an architect. I feel like that's all right. And then finally, when you see those 2 and Jette sort of hinted at this, when you see the two words together, what does that make you, what's your like initial response or reaction when you see the two words liberating structure put together? I always find myself, I always need like a movement to illustrate it. It's like I need like a physical shape to demonstrate liberating structure. Cool. Seems lovely to see. Yeah, Sinai paradox, that's a good one. Paradox. That's going to be the heart of a lot of what we talk about today. Paradox. All right, as you're finishing up in chat, I'm going to do a little brief overview here, really, really quick. So the little bit of just formal background on liberating structure. Sorry, I think my device is taking a long time to load up here. I feel like I've had the same computer through the whole pandemic, and I feel like we all owe our devices like a whole era of self-care and like non-effort. Good poor devices. They put in a lot of work. Okay, so the two people who kind of wrote down, and I'm specific when I say this, Keith and Henry, who sort of helped co-develop this body of work, they really just wrote some stuff down that had been in practice elsewhere. So I don't want it to come across like they invented liberating structures. They just kind of helped organize a body of work that was kind of happening across domains. And they managed to write down some stuff that has proven, I think, helpful and useful for other people. I really liked this little statement that they have about their purposes, what their reasons for doing this work were. And I think it shares in this kind of underlying theme of hope that we're working with today. I will say, we didn't see as much in the chat, but I think it's just important to note that the phrase liberating structures sometimes, I think, creates an expectation that the work is more directly, I don't know, directly linked to anti-oppression or liberation practices. And while the underlying principles and commitments, I think, are very complementary to that work, it is not where it comes from. It's not what Keith and Henry's background was. So just like to acknowledge that the language sometimes, I think, makes it feel like it's going to be more directly linked. And like I said, there's complementarity there, but it is not where Keith and Henry were starting from. What else do we want to say? I will say the one thing that probably is going to be familiar to at least some of the people in the generative learning lab and maybe the College of Education is that phrase liberating structures comes from, at least in the literature, William Torbert, Bill Torbert. And there's some kind of nice writing that he did about it. And then the other major source of inspiration for liberating structures came from kind of the emerging field of complexity science that was developing, I guess, formally developing in the 90s, even though all of the threads of it go back much, much earlier. And kind of the blossoming of all these different people coming together and trying to translate the kind of concepts, the ideas, the principles of complexity science into something tangible that groups could work with. So I'm just going to skip through this. Not that interesting. If people want, we can go back.
Yeah, I'm going to put the slide deck in the chat so everybody can download a copy and you can look at all of this if you like.
And all these are just some of the specific complexity people that Keith and Henry were inspired by. So that's all we're going to say about sort of the background of the work. And now we're going to dig right into using one of the methods as preparation for what Yetta is going to take us through in a moment, which is called the Conversation Cafe. So for this, you're going to need a pen and oh, the slides need access. Okay, I will do that right now. Sorry, I thought I had done that already.
No, I'm working on it. It's fine.
Okay. So the first thing we're going to do, you're going to need a pen and a piece of paper. And this method is not in the formal liberating structures repertoire, although it's likely to be added. And it comes from Linda Berry, who, if you don't know, Linda Berry is a fantastic educator at University of Wisconsin-Madison. She has a book. Where do I have a copy of it right here? No, you have it. Oh, maybe I'll grab it while we're in the Conversation Cafe. Um, she has a book called Syllabus, which, if you're an educator, is worth pulling up. Her book Syllabus is completely wonderful look at how to organize a learning environment. So the first thing you're going to do with the spiral journal, so you're going to take your piece of paper, you're going to divide it into four. So you're going to draw a horizontal and vertical line. And then at the center of the page for about a minute, you're going to drop your attention from everything else that's happening. You're going to focus very carefully on drawing an incredibly slow spiral, starting just at the center of your page. And you want to keep your spiral as contained as possible and just focus on drawing that really slow, really careful spiral for about a minute. When you're ready, you can start doing that. When you're ready, you can find an ending to the spiral. And we're going to now have four separate prompts. We're going to do one at a time. And for each prompt, you're welcome to write. You can just draw a little sketch if you prefer. However you choose to respond to the prompt is the right way to do it. And it doesn't really matter which place you start. You can go counterclockwise. You can go whichever direction you want. It doesn't matter where you put the responses. So the first question, it's just like, what are some changes that you're moving through right now? And this can be at the very sort of as Yetta mentioned in her class, can be at the very microcosmic level, or maybe they're more global changes that you're moving through and moving with right now. So what are some changes that you're working through at the moment? And the next prompt when you're ready. We're about a minute on each one. When you think about those changes that you just described, what's sort of the stuff that's making them difficult or messy or painful or confusing? As you think about what's happening in those changes, is there anything that you're sort of losing or letting go of as part of them? What's messy, difficult, hard, confusing about the changes that you just described? Next prompt when you're ready. So when you're thinking about those changes, what might they make possible for you, for others? Is there anything calming, exciting, intriguing, affirming about those changes? And then finally, or lastly, what do you hope will happen for yourself and other through these changes? What do you hope can or will happen for yourself and others? All right, when you've finished writing or finding yourself at a conclusion, just take a scan across your page and maybe circle or put a little star next to just any thoughts that came up or words or phrases or ideas that you might want to reflect on with other people in the subsequent conversation. You're not, it's kind of like a preparation thing. It's just kind of meant to help you get organized. And maybe some of it you want to explicitly bring into the next conversation, but you don't have to. Maybe it's just helping shape what you want to talk about. I will say we're going to debrief each method at the conclusion. So we're going to go through sort of a sequence here. Spiral Journal, Jette is going to take us now through something called the Conversation Cafe. Then we'll do one more method and we'll debrief at the conclusion of that. So Jette, you want to take people through this?
And I think what we want to do next is to enjoy each other's company and create a sense of community by talking about some of these questions that might be on your cheat sheet now, your spiral journal. So the purpose for this next part is really to have you all be engaged with each other to make sense of some of those challenges and maybe hopes that you have written down. And if you could walk us through the next slide or give me the next slide, I'm going to share how we're going to do that. But before I do that, I should say the background for Conversation Cafe really comes from the summer of 2001. It was developed in that time frame by a couple of people who had all experienced 9/11, as many of us have, and it was clear that something else was needed to help people make sense in community of the experiences that we have had collectively in the United States, but also really in the world. So for more background to the structure, you will find these links on the slide deck, but I just wanted to emphasize that the structure was developed during that time frame and initiated by that set of events, let's say. So how this structure works, and the big picture idea is to think about your relationship with hope and acknowledging that your relationship and everybody's relationship with hope is complex. Some of the meta questions here will be, what are you with hope? Where are you with hope right now? And what's your way of understanding or describing hope? So I'm giving the topic first so that we're thinking about these as I take you through what will happen when we go into breakout rooms. So in a moment, we will give you the opportunity to meet with a couple of other people in a breakout room. And there will be 4 rounds on going through this Conversation Cafe. The first round, we invite you to state one by one your perspective or your reflection on this question that is on this page. So what is your relationship with hope? Where are you with it right now? What's your way of understanding or describing hope? And when I say in round 1, it's a one by one, each person shares, I mean that you just share whatever you want to share, and there's no need to relate to anything that has been said before or anything you anticipate that's going to be said. It's just like where you are, and that is round 1. And usually it takes about 5-6 minutes for that. So make sure that everybody gets to share their part. In the second round, we're actually going to pivot a little bit. Each person, we will again go each person sharing one by one, but this might be a follow-up or an elaboration on what you have said, what you have heard, anything that comes from round 1. So you're now in the second round relating to each other. And as a little hint for the structure, maybe try avoid asking questions to each other, because then it might be just between 2 people. And we really want to continue the idea that everybody gets to share, but feel free to relate to each other's comments. And that's round 2. In round 3, we'll invite you for an open discussion. So that's the no structure kind of idea of talking about it. And in round 4, we invite you to return to each person speaking one by one for a small amount of time and share what are you taking away from this conversation. Now, to help you a little bit, we will probably use the prompting, the signaling within the breakout rooms. So then, you can see when it's maybe time to move on to round 2, round 3, round 4. So we'll help you a little bit with the timekeeping, and we'll be in breakout rooms for the next 30-ish minutes. Is that right, Fisher? I don't know how you're setting up.
Yep, that's right. I'm just going to put the the sequence in chat as well, so it should follow you into the.
Super kind. Yeah, thank you.
I think that's good. Any clarifications people need before we move into the conversation groups?
Fisher and I will stay behind. So if there's anything happening and you wish to join us, or there's yeah, we'll be in the middle. We'll be in the main room in case you want to make use of that. But otherwise, I think Fisher, we can just open those rooms and we'll see you in about 30 minutes.
All right, here we go. That was lovely. Thanks for doing that.
Great. Hey, welcome back, everyone.
Oh, there is Dr. Sims
Yes.
in the
and
crowd.
a few more people, I think, will be coming back. Have we closed the rooms? Oh, 24 seconds. Your group was
I
quick
give
to
people
come back.
interest come back timer.
So,
People are like,
so
no,
for this
bring everybody
one,
back fast.
do you unpin you?
No, we're good, I think.
Okay.
I think mostly people want to see everyone. That's fine if you want to see just the speaker. I know that you know how to toggle between the different views. So yes, we're back here. Yet very soon we'll give you an opportunity to connect with each other on what you've just experienced in our third liberating structure. And the third structure is called impromptu networking. The idea here is to really have micro interactions with people who might not have been or might have been in the same groupings for the Conversation Cafe, and to rapidly share some of the challenges, expectations, while building new connections. So this is really where we're moving towards next. And how this works, you'll have the chance to meet 3 different people in rapid rounds. And each time we give you just the same question. So that easy in that way, but you'll have the chance to talk about the same question 3 times. Each conversation is timed at about 4 minutes. So when you meet your partner, and there will be just one other person with you, be mindful to split that time equally or equitably, or however you find it's the time belonging to both of you. And after that, we'll really come back to the main. So we'll come back between each of the rounds. It's just a thing in Zoom that we briefly need to have you come back, but we'll rapidly rearrange and send you back out into a new pair. So this will happen for 3 rounds. And the prompt for this impromptu networking is share one learning and lingering inquiry about hope, change, or liberating structures that you're bringing with you from these conversations. So think about maybe one learning or lingering inquiry about the topic that we presented today, which was change, hope, and liberating structures that you're bringing with you from these conversations. And if there are no questions, I'll just ask Fisher to open the first impromptu networking room, again, 4 minutes with one partner, and enjoy the debrief.
There might be a couple trios, and there might be a couple of people that have arrived recently. So just be generous with people that might not have any of the context from the Conversation Cafe.
And for sure, we know they have some ideas about those topics, so that will work out just fine.
Let's see.
Or I'm having
Our final part, which is a little debrief. And I think, Fisher, were you happy to share? Shall I share? What's the best thing here?
I can do it.
Okay.
Just any, either in chat, or if you want to open up your microphone and talk that way, just any observations about the structure of the methods from today, anything that just stood out about how the methods were structured.
They seem to grow in different directions. So for example, the spiral journal is very internal,
Hmm.
and then larger group internal, larger group, one-on-one, or maybe three, At the same time, it was larger questions and then more specific. So that was an observation. And Fisher, your facial response makes me think you're like, oh yes, it worked. That was intentional.
No, well, no, it was intentional.
The puppeteer.
I think I appreciated the clarity and specificity with which you described it, Shannon. That's what my smile was about. I was like, oh wow, you like really grabbed a hold of something that maybe was indeliberate, but not unintentional. Oh, can you be that? Can you be deliberate and unintentional, or indeliberate and unintentional? Whatever, don't matter.
Well, if I may hold the mic for just a second
Yeah,
more,
no.
that was something I was thinking about in my last conversation with Sung Yoon, is liberating is freedom. And structure for many is boxed. And so that intentional and unintentional liberating structure, and my group, in the second conversation cafe, we talked about that dichotomy of hope where it holds multiple. It's not either or. It holds at least two in balance. So I think you can be intentional and not deliberate at the same time.
Cool.
Thank you. Good things in the chat happening as well. Wow, too many to refer to,
Oh, yeah.
and you can read them for yourselves. But so just a good sharing space. I read here, and the paradox around having time constraint, and that maybe also being liberating through encouraging brevity and focus. I love that. Yeah, but really got a lot of good things. We couldn't fit the lunch into lunch and learn. I agree. I'm hungry. I had no lunch yet, so that's probably a good point, just to make sure people know that you can't eat while you're in conversation with others. At least it's a little tough. Anything you're picking up, Fisher?
Yeah, just one of the things that I build off of what Shannon shared is maybe just two little things. I'll do a quick screen share here. Two of the, I think, bigger contributions that maybe Keith and Henry made is, from my point of view, what they describe as kind of the DNA of interactions. And these aren't the only elements that you can design with in an interaction, but they're ones that tend to translate well across language, across time, across locations. And what I was appreciating partially what you were describing, Shannon, was like the role of the invitation or prompt and how those were connected to each other, but also the way in which the configuration of groups was shifting from interior individual with prompts that were more reflective to outward, small group, big group. A couple of people have mentioned timing now in the chat. Just each liberating structure, as Keith and Henry described it, specifies these 5 elements. And partially what I think has made it easy for the methods to spread is that they all share this same descriptive logic, that all of the methods are described with an invitation, a way that participation is shared, a way that groups get configured, the way that space is arranged, and the way that time is sort of sequenced. And so that's sort of kind of the substrate of what all of the different liberating structures methods have in common. The other thing that they have in common is a set of 10 principles. We can take a look at them in a moment, but the underlying principles, I think, are sort of what are Keith and Henry's hypothesis of what becomes possible if we pay more careful attention to the structure of our interactions. And so these are the 10 principles that Keith and Henry hold out for themselves as what's what's possible in groups and organizations that are tending to the structure of their work together. So thought we'd highlight that. And then just the last piece of it is basically liberating structures. It's like a menu, a repertoire, a collection. There's a whole bunch of different ways to describe it, but it's these different just methods that can be combined, recombined, sequenced together. And because of that DNA logic, because of this, what we find is these 33 that are sort of written down provide a template for people to translate other practices into something that works well in new contexts. So like you might have a really cool thing that you developed in one of your teaching practices, and you want a way to share that with other people in a way that is easy to translate. That's kind of what I have found is pretty magical about the Liberating Structures community, is that it's very inventive in terms of people taking concepts and translating them into methods or tools, taking a practice that's maybe been emergent in one situation and moving it over to other situations and contexts. And so all of these methods are Creative Commons licensed, so they're out there, they're free, you use them, you don't have to do anything special to use them. They're just available. So anything else yet that you want to mention, or I wasn't watching chat, so if anybody.
Oh, yeah, no, I've been watching chat, and there is a specific question. We'll end with that one. But I think it's just in my practice, both when I worked in industry and now, as you guys, many of you know me, in other learning settings here at the University of Georgia, I just enjoy this tool set so much. It's kind of easy to use, and it's powerful, and it's inclusive. And we had a beautiful course session last Friday where we didn't really know how to talk about what had happened that week, meaning last Tuesday. And we kind of didn't, but we connected with each other. I felt in a very positive, embracing community way, letting the structures help us feel connection. And it worked really well. And I appreciate that everybody was open then, and many of you are open now to just engage in conversation around these structures and how they might help you. The last question I would like to ask Fisher, and it's an important question because, and then we'll close. Sungun, yeah, I'm almost ready. What was the purpose of drawing the spiral? Could you please allude to that?
Yeah, sorry, I'm typing up the response in chat, but this came from Linda Berry. And she was teaching a class on creative writing to non-literary students. And once every class, somebody had to stand in front of the room and read their story. And of course, everyone was like completely freaked out, right? It's like, oh no, I can't, like, this is horrifying. This is too much. So what she did was whenever somebody was in front of the room reading, everyone else had to be drawing the spiral. And it gave the sensation that I was present with you, but not focused on you. And so she did it as a way to help people feel more comfortable reading, knowing that folks were ambiently with you, but not like hyper focused on you. And she also thought it was a good way to practice this. How do you drop your attention but still focus on something? She's very interested in this sort of paradox of like maintaining focus, dropping attention, having attention, dropping focus, kind of that paradox. And the spiraling is one way of her helping people do that little bit of, it's almost like mindfulness work without it being provoking to people who aren't comfortable with that language.
Yeah. And lots of other cool stuff that you can explore with Linda Berry's books. And I know Fisher held one up earlier today, so that was cool. So I think at this point, I really want to thank you all. We're at, we've done the 90 minutes together. And Songun, just if you could help us to get to the end point. We have a few more links for you. And on behalf of the Generative Learning Complexity Lab, we would like to invite you to learn more about what we do. This was just one of the sessions that we run in a semester. We also have a certificate program in complexity leadership that you might be interested hearing more about. So I'll make sure we get these links to you as well. You can find us on the UGA website. And on behalf of all of my colleagues and the lab leaders, thank you so much for being together and for building community. I hope you're taking something away from this session. And that's it for us today. Wishing you a good afternoon. Thank you.